For our practice that is in a REACH ACO, how do you recommend that we address MIPS?
Great question, Katherine. The simplest strategy is to skip MIPS and accept the full 9% negative adjustment for all providers with a MIPS liability. This would also include the assumption that any partial QPs will elect not to participate in MIPS. This involves a simple cost-benefit analysis comparing the monetary cost and the effort necessary to submit compared to the total potential loss in negative adjustments if you don't submit. Simply a business decision. Now, a minimal effort might avoid the deepest penalties and may be worth considering. So the next more aggressive strategy would be to prepare and submit a group submission for your practice that would cover all providers who either must or could choose to submit. The dynamics of a group submission in this case would be the same as for any group submission. Data for all providers in the REACH ACO or not would be submitted, but would only benefit those with a MIPS liability. The most aggressive strategy would be to be strategic and selective. You'd want to engage a registry with capabilities like ours and submit claims through the year to identify your providers and their measure eligibility. You would include monitoring the QPP participation status tool at each of the snapshot periods. There's 3 pertinent to this decision per year to identify your provider's submission eligibility status. In the latter half of the year, you would choose the most promising measures to meet the needs of your presumed MIPS-eligible providers and test the performance rates. You'll want some data to guide your partial QP's decision to participate in MIPS or not. So let's talk a moment about the submission dynamics. There's 4 performance strategies to address. Cost. Now, you don't make any submissions for cost. Your MIPS participating providers will be measured on any and all cost measures that apply to their submission type and for which they meet or exceed case minimums. You can limit your cost measure liability by using 1 or more MVP submissions. MVP submissions limit your cost measure liability to just those specific cost measures attached to the specific MVP. Second category is improvement activities. Any of your REACH participating providers who have or choose to have a MIPS liability will get full credit for the improvement activities category by virtue of the APM ACO participation. All of your providers not in the REACH ACO will need to address improvement activities. For a group MIPS submission, your REACH participating providers might carry the improvement activities requirements for the whole group by virtue of the APM participation credit. That's one of the categories I haven't seen Medicare address yet and may prove to be in your favor. Third category is promoting interoperability. A submission for the whole group would cover this for all MIPS liable providers and is probably the most cost-effective submission. The quality category. A group submission of any 6 measures or any 4 choices from any of the MVPs would be satisfactory. To be more strategic, there will be individuals whose MIPS quality scores alone in an individual submission would be higher than the group score. If supplemental individual submissions were made, the affected providers would be awarded the highest quality score available to them, which could be the individual score or the group score. There are really 2 strategic choices. One, will your partial QPs participate in MIPS or not? You'd like a good estimate of each expected MIPS score before you choose. By the 4th quarter of each year, near the end of which partial QPs must make their MIPS participation decision, you should have a pretty good estimate of scoring on quality, improvement activities, and promoting interoperability. You can't be sure on cost, which is not submitted but calculated by Medicare, but last year's cost scoring is your best guide for what to expect this year. Factor in any aggressive efforts you have taken to improve your cost performance. If you expect your score to give you a positive adjustment, partial QPs should participate. If you expect your score to give you a negative adjustment, partial QPs should not. The second strategic choice, for partial QPs and for those providers who have no choice, there's also potential value to making some select individual submissions. In the final MIPS analysis, Medicare will grant the highest earned score to those participants who have multiple submissions attributed to them. Some of your individual providers will get a better score individually than the group gets from their group submission. If the difference is large enough and the cost of submission is low enough, it could serve the practice better to make targeted individual submissions.